Okay, let's dive in. Picture this. You're in Srinagar, Kashmir.
Beautiful place.
Right. And you're near the Jhelum River. There's this gentle sound of water, but then also this clicking,
Mm-hmm.
rhythmic.
That'd be the hand looms.
Exactly. We're talking early 2025, inside a workshop. Mohammad Dar and his wife, Shameema, they're weaving.
Keeping this ancient craft alive.
Yeah.
Kashmiri carpets.
And these aren't just, rugs. They're history. They've been in palaces, museums,
Yeah.
centuries old.
It's an incredible tradition. Really speaks to the artistry and skill passed down through generations, especially in Kashmir, that region between India and Pakistan.
Generations is right. Think about Mohammed. He's 50 now, started weaving when he was just 9.
Wow.
And Shameema, she's 43, started at 10.
So young.
Yeah, back then in Srinagar's old downtown, being a weaver, that was something, a source of real pride.
You can almost feel that history in their workshop, can't you? The sound, the
Oh my
color.
God. The vibrant silk threads everywhere. And then there's this other element, almost cryptic, the talim.
Ah, the talim.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. It's like the secret code, isn't it?
It really is, like a blueprint, but written in symbols and numbers on this often yellowed paper.
Guiding every single knot. Like musical notation, but for weaving.
Exactly. Something a cryptographer might study. And Mohammad and Shameema, they just read it intuitively.
Decades of practice, I suppose.
It must be. And the time involved,
Hmm.
just staggering. Month, sometimes longer, for one single rug.
Each knot a tiny testament to their skill and patience. Unbelievable patience.
You'd think with that level of artistry, that kind of dedication, they'd be comfortable financially.
Well, that's the difficult part. It's often not the case. The reality can be quite sobering.
Shameema actually said their work is more about survival, keeping things going, not about getting wealthy.
It's a common story in traditional crafts, unfortunately. The value isn't always reflected in the artisan's income.
And it's not like they haven't faced challenges before.
Oh, absolutely. Decades of unrest in the region.
Right, plus competition from, cheaper machine-made carpets flooding the market.
They've shown incredible resilience through all that.
But now there's this new, huge threat, something from completely outside the region.
The U.S. Harris.
Yeah. Announced early 2025, President Trump's import tariffs.
And this is where it gets really complex, because these tariffs were aimed at, major economies, big industrial players.
Like China.
Exactly. Not really intended for a small-scale cottage industry like Kashmir's carpet weavers.
But the impact is hitting them hard. It's kind of unexpected, isn't it? Most people wouldn't connect those dots, tariffs and artisanal rugs.
It's a prime example of unintended consequences in global trade policy. It really highlights how interconnected everything is.
It feels like using a sledgehammer to swat a fly and breaking valuable china in the process.
That's a good analogy, because the tariff is significant, 28%.
28% on imports into the U.S. And the U.S. is what? Their biggest market.
It is, which is quite remarkable. India exports around $1.2 billion worth of carpets annually to the U.S. overall.
Out of about $2 billion globally.
Right. And Kashmiri carpets are the high end, the luxury segment within that, prized items.
So these broad tariffs meant to protect American industries, they just slapped that 28% on everything. No distinction.
Pretty much. They don't differentiate between mass-produced factory goods and these unique, handcrafted pieces of art.
Which means overnight, the cost for an American buyer jumps significantly.
Exactly. And that has an immediate knock-on effect.
Back to the weavers.
Straight back to Srinagar. We heard from Wilayat Ali. He's a carpet supplier there.
What did he say?
He's already seeing it. Orders canceled, shipments even being returned.
Why? Just the cost.
Simple economics for the U.S. buyers, he said. It comes down to profit and loss. If the price jumps 28%, it might just not be viable for them anymore.
Wow. So the intricate work, the months of labor, that doesn't factor in when the tariff hits.
It contributes to the inherent value, of course, but it doesn't necessarily make a buyer willing or able to absorb such a sudden, large price hike.
The human cost. That's what gets me. Mohammed mentioned he's the last weaver left in his neighborhood.
The last one, how many used to be there?
He said over 100, maybe 20 years ago.
That's a drastic change.
People just had to leave, find more stable work. And he's wondering, what's the point of having these incredible skills if no one buys the carpets anymore?
Devastating thought.
He even made this sort of wry comment about maybe just weaving doormats for the local market instead.
Ugh. That really underscores the potential loss here. Generational skills potentially vanishing.
And Shameema asked this really poignant question. She wondered if the higher price for Americans would mean they finally get paid more.
Ah, and the answer is likely.
Almost certainly no, from what we understand. That extra cost rarely trickles down.
No, it usually just dampens demand. Fewer orders, more uncertainty for the weavers themselves. That's the typical pattern.
So the fear is American retailers might just switch.
Exactly. Look for cheaper, perhaps machine-made alternatives from elsewhere, which directly threatens the legacy of Kashmir's hand-woven tradition.
It's like swapping a slow-cooked, incredible meal for a microwave dinner because it's cheaper.
A stark comparison, but yeah, that's the risk. The convenience and lower cost might win out over quality and heritage.
And you can apparently already see the signs in Srinagar. Quieter workshops.
Yes, and fewer young people wanting to learn the craft. Mohammed mentioned his own son is more interested in computers.
Can you blame him, seeing the struggles?
It's completely understandable. When a traditional craft seems to offer such an uncertain future, other paths look much more appealing.
And we should remember this industry was already facing pressure, right? Even before the tariffs.
Definitely. The U.S. is a huge market, but they do export elsewhere. Still, the competition from machine-made rugs was already fierce, and the cost of raw materials like silk and wool has been rising.
Plus, the weavers themselves only get a small slice of the final price tag.
A very small fraction, often, which leaves the whole industry quite vulnerable to shocks like this.
Is there any estimate of the impact? Like, in numbers?
The Carpet Export Promotion Council of India projected potentially a 30% drop in U.S. demand because of that 28% price hike.
30%? That's huge, especially in a region with limited economic alternatives.
It translates directly into lost livelihoods. It brings to mind what Wilayat Ali, the supplier, said. This is our heritage, but heritage doesn't pay the bills.
Powerful. And it makes you question the tariffs themselves. Are they even effective in this context?
Well, many economists argue that these kinds of broad import taxes often just raise costs for consumers.
Without actually boosting local production much.
Especially when, like here, the U.S. doesn't really have a large domestic handwoven rug industry to protect in the first place.
So who actually wins here?
That's the big question. It doesn't seem to be American workers in this specific industry. It's certainly not the artisans in Kashmir.
And probably not American consumers either, who might just pay more.
It seems like a policy with a lot of collateral damage and unclear benefits in this particular case.
Are they trying anything? Looking for solutions?
The industry is, yes. They're exploring options.
Yeah.
Trying to develop other markets, Dubai, Singapore, maybe focus more on the domestic market within India itself.
Makes sense. Diversify.
Right. And looking at government support, maybe modernizing a bit, using e-commerce to connect directly with buyers, emphasizing the sustainable luxury angle.
Highlighting the handmade quality, the heritage.
Exactly. But these are all, longer-term plays.
While the tariff is an immediate crisis.
Precisely. It's happening now.
So you think about Mohammad and Shameema back at their loom, still weaving.
Still weaving.
Yeah.
Their hands still moving with that incredible skill. But the hope, the optimism, it must be dwindling as demand falls.
Shameema apparently said something quite reflective about maybe their work being appreciated more in the future.
Yeah, a sort of bittersweet thought. Recognizing the inherent value, even if the current market doesn't fully reflect it. A hope that history will value their art.
So it's a really precarious situation. A centuries-old tradition, world-renowned craftsmanship, potentially unraveling because of a policy made thousands of miles away with completely different targets in mind.
It's a stark reminder of global interconnectedness and how actions in one sphere can have profound, unintended impacts elsewhere.
And maybe it makes us think about our own role, too, as consumers.
Absolutely. Choosing hand-woven, even if it costs a bit more, can be a direct way to support these artisans and preserve this kind of heritage. It's an investment, really.
Beyond just buying things, maybe there's a bigger picture, advocating for fairer trade.
It's certainly something to consider. Engaging with policymakers, asking for trade rules that consider the vulnerability of small-scale, traditional artisans. There's even that hashtag being used online.
Hashtag Save Kashmir Carpets.
Right. A way to raise awareness.
Ultimately, though, these artisans have faced challenges for centuries. They are resilient.
Incredibly so. There's hope that they can navigate this too, perhaps with the right support, maybe even a change in policy down the line. Their perseverance is remarkable.
It really is. And it leaves us with a final thought to mull over, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
In this world that's getting smaller and more connected every day, How do we make sure our big economic policies, the ones designed for giant industries, don't accidentally destroy the delicate, irreplaceable threads of unique cultures and the lives of individual people pouring their souls into timeless crafts?
Yeah, that's the critical question we need to keep asking.